Okay, well, good evening, everyone. Today is February 13th, Tuesday. It is 7:07, and we will start. This meeting is being recorded and will be made available uh, on the YouTube channel and Medfield TV. And we will start with a roll call to order. If everybody could, I'll call out your name, and then if you could just say your name and participating remotely, that would be great. So, and I'm just going to do it in the order I see you all on my screen. So, Peter Michelson,
Peter Michelson present, participating by Zoom.
Brent,
Brent Nelson present, participating remotely.
Emily,
Emily McCabe participating remotely.
and Pete Saladino.
Pete Saladino participating remotely.
Bob. You're muted, Bob.
Bob Slaney participating remotely.
And Deb
Deb Cardiser participating remotely.
and Jill.
Jill Rafter participating remotely.
Okay, great. I know Ed's trying to join us, but if he does, we'll announce it when he joins. Okay, so I think I sent around the let me see if I can just quickly share my screen here. If this will work. Yeah. Can you all see that screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, good. So this is our agenda for this evening. It's basically we'll talk a little bit about we'll approve some minutes and talk about the calendar and some things that are coming up. And then we're going to go through the current status of the 25 school and town budget guidance. We've had some changes to that. And we're at the stage now where we can share that with everybody and talk about those changes. And then there's some smaller town departments that we will go through. We'll get a very quick school building committee update from Pete. And then we'll talk about, if you remember, in the fall, we talked about free cash. And we'll talk about an update to that and changes that where that stands currently. And then we'll go through the warrant article list for the 2024 town meeting and the changes on that. Anybody have any questions on that agenda? Okay. This is our calendar. And there's there's no new meetings that have been added. The one agenda item that we were planning on doing this evening for the school department budget briefing has been moved to the 27th, and so that will take up that meeting, most of that meeting. And then it'll either be the 12th or the 19th, but probably the 19th, but I need to confirm with Jean Minio. But the citizens petition on the Belforge Arts Center petition, we'll discuss that on the one of those dates, probably the 19th, but I'll let everybody know. In the meantime, if anyone has questions that they would like that aren't answered, or information that's not provided, or questions that haven't been answered in the submission that Jean has given to us, I sent around, please let me know, and I will get them to Jean, and she can address them prior to coming in to talk about that citizens petition. But other than that, the schedule is pretty much the same. Deb is, has the meeting minute assignment for this meeting. And let's see, with that, I don't know if I did send around a draft of the January 30th meeting minutes. And I don't know if anybody had any comments or questions on those. Anybody? No? Okay. Well, if not, I would entertain a motion to approve those minutes.
Move to approve the January 30th, 2024 minutes as submitted.
Is there a second?
Second,
Second.
Okay. So I have to do a roll call vote here. See, we have, I've got to be able to find you all on my screen here, but, okay, why don't we go with, I guess we'll just do, why don't we do Bob,
Yes.
Jill,
Yes.
Brent,
Yes, approved.
Pete Michelson,
yes.
Emily,
Yes.
Deb,
Yes.
and Pete Saladino.
Yes.
Okay, I think I got everybody. All right, motion passes. And I'm a yes. Sorry, I'm a yes. Steve Callahan is a yes. All right, so that's takes care of that agenda item. So the next agenda item is going to be let's see, what do we have next? We have the discussion of the 25 school and town budget guidance. So just by way of background here, everybody remembers in the fall, we provided some guidance after reviewing all of the revenue, forecasted revenue and the fixed cost. You know, we implemented the new budget program for the fiscal 25 and provided upfront guidance to the school departments and the towns on what we would expect a balanced budget to look like within the Prop 2.5 framework. And at the time we put that guidance together, there were sort of two items that we knew were sort of you know, potentially subject to change. And one was the state aid. We had budgeted a 1% increase in state aid. And we knew we hadn't actually gotten the governor's budget at that point. And then the other was the health insurance. And so the health insurance, if you'll hear more about that this evening, but basically you remember that was in the process of being going through a plan redesign and having negotiations with all the unions. And that took some time to accomplish and get through. And we've now sort of reached the end of that process for health insurance. And Christine and Frank will take us through that. So what we've sent out in the materials for this meeting is the revised budget guidance. And I think at this point, I'll let Frank, do you want to take us through this?
Actually, Steve, if I could lead off, I've actually put together a presentation because I
Okay.
think it's important where health insurance is, you know, essentially a $5 million line item in our budget. And I know I talked last year at length about the PEC process and the plan design process, but I thought it'd be helpful for our new members and kind of a refresher for everybody of where we are on health insurance. So Frank's actually going to begin the presentation, run the slides for me.
Okay, great. I stopped sharing, so you should be all set, Frank.
Yeah. Okay. There we go. So in Massachusetts, health insurance is a mandatory subject of collective bargaining. It falls under Massachusetts General Law 150E. Any plan design change prior to 2011, any plan design change, any co-payment design change, basically anything that a municipality wanted to do in terms of health insurance, you were required to enter into collective bargaining with every union. Rising health insurance costs, both in Massachusetts and nationally, were becoming an issue. Just prior to 2011, Governor Patrick was able to pass landmark health insurance reform, which streamlined the process, and it took Chapter 32B, Section 19, which is the existing health insurance law, and it expanded it to Section 21 to 23, which allowed you to form a PEC and negotiate directly with the unions. It was designed so that towns could automatically join what Massachusetts calls the GIC, which is the Group Insurance Commission, and that is the insurance that's provided to state employees. So it streamlined the way towns could join that group. Medfield chose not to do anything in 2011. And we continued on the road that we were with, which was our insurance through Maya. If you can change the next one. Okay, so currently we offer health insurance to all of our full-time active and retired employees, and that's school and town. And that's why we have separated that out as a fixed cost. You don't see that in any one singular budget because it's provided to both school and town. In 2009, just prior to the health insurance change, we joined Maya Health Benefit Trust, which is one of the largest municipal purchasing collaboratives in the nation. There's currently 180 cities and towns that are part of Maya for health insurance. Once you add property and casualty into that number expands to about 345. One of the things to point out, prior to 2009, we were completely self-insured. We basically ran our own health benefit trust, and we worked with the IAC to make that transition in 2009 to Maya and turned that over to third-party monitoring. It was a huge benefit to the employees to do that for a couple of reasons. One was in terms of HIPAA, and the other was in terms of a better benefit cost because we were bidding our health insurance with only the pool of our employees, which was rather small at the time. So the coverage we currently provide through Maya is Blue Cross Blue Shield. We offer an HMO, a PPO, we offer an HMO high deductible plan, and then we offer a MedX plan to our retirees. And we do offer also a voluntary dental insurance, and that is through Delta Dental. Health insurance is a cost-sharing relationship. So we share the total cost of health insurance with our employees. So for example, if you are a town employee on the HMO or the HMO high deductible plan, the town pays 62% of that cost and the employee is responsible for 38%. If you're an active employee on our PPO plan, then the town covers 50% of that plan and the employee is responsible for 50%. And retirees on the HMO or the MedX plan are 50% as well. We have roughly 10 employees who are on the HMO plan who are retired because they're not eligible for Medicare. Currently, if you retire prior to 65 and you go on Medicare, you're automatically enrolled in our MedX plan. Next slide. So the IAC. IAC is an insurance advisory committee, and they have had a history of working with my predecessor, Michael Sullivan. They were a very active IAC. They worked very closely when we transitioned from self-insured to the Maya Health Benefits Trust. They have been a fantastic group to work with. I can't speak a lot to their relationship with Michael, so I can talk to them. I can talk to you directly when I took over in 2019, that they were tremendous. They actually led the charge in the fall of 2020 for the fiscal year 21 budget. They led the charge on plan design changes that saved the town a significant amount of money, particularly when we had a very rough budget year. For those of you that remember our outdoor town meeting, health insurance was a big concern of ours in 2020. In 2022, Maya predicted a 9% increase for Medfield, and they come out, usually they're out in the beginning. Oops, sorry, usually they're out in the, I'm not sure what's going on.
Hey, I think I know the problem. Can you promote iPhone 6? I think that's Ed Bozella as a panelist, and I just muted him, so hopefully he won't speak, but he should be promoted as a panelist. Frank.
I think I see him as a panelist.
Oh, he is. Okay.
Yeah,
All
I
right.
think he's on there.
Okay, good.
So Maya comes out in January, and they let us know in 2022 that we were anticipating a 9% increase for Medfield. And that is not, was not uncommon. 2 years ago, we were seeing health insurance costs rise throughout the country. And in terms of Medfield, we experienced a tremendous amount of people who were not using our services, our health insurance services in 2021, obviously due to the pandemic. 2022, our experience rate was lowered. So we were anticipating a 9% increase. The IAC met, and we had several conversations, and I know I kept the Warrant Committee updated on these. I was very concerned that our employees could not handle a 9% increase, both the cost of living and inflation. That was too much to ask our employees to take on, and obviously too much for the town to handle in our budget increase. So the IAC worked to put together a voluntary plan design change. Now, just to make clear, while health insurance is a mandatory subject of bargaining, the IAC can propose voluntary plan design changes. All unions would need to agree to those plan design changes. So we worked with Maya and came up with a plan design change that would have introduced a low deductible, and that would have brought that 9% increase down to a 2.7% increase. And even with the tremendous work by Nancy McLaughlin, who was chair of the IAC, we were not successful in asking all of the unions for that voluntary sign-on for the plan design change. So unfortunately, all of our employees saw an 8.7% increase on July 1st of 2023. I had been very open with the IAC and the employees that we were not going to be able to sustain those increases like that. And I was asking the board to adopt what's called Chapter 32B, Section 19. I did not take the 32B 21 to 23 route, which would have streamlined the process, and it would have mandated those health insurance changes. As I told you last year, have a great relationship with the IAC, and I thought we could get it done together. And we needed to have a collaborative effort on that. Next slide. So we formed the PEC just after September. The PEC is the Public Employment Committee, and there's representation on that committee from all unions. I will tell you, one of the things that makes me disappointed and sad in this process is that my non-union employees no longer have a seat at the table. While they have representation on the IAC, they do not have representation on the PEC. So there was representation on the PEC from all unions, and it's a weighted vote based on union membership. You would then negotiate directly with the PEC. So we had several meetings. We proposed back and forth proposals to find the best possible plan design change. And I'm happy to report that earlier this month, in January, we came to a plan design change that resulted in cost savings. We now have a 3-year MOU with the PEC that will cover fiscal year 25, 26, and 27. The biggest change to that is our HMO and our PPO plans now include a low deductible of $500 and $1,000.
Christine, can I just interrupt for 1 second?
Absolutely.
Ed Vazella, if you can hear me, can you speak your name and say you're participating remotely? Unmute yourself and do that. You should be a panelist now.
Ed Vazella, participating remotely.
Hi,
Awesome. Thank you. Good evening. Thank you, Ed.
It was a trial.
Okay. Sorry, Christine, go ahead.
No, you're fine. So I put together, wait, if you can go back one. There you go. So I just put together a quick illustration of what this actually means to make this change. So when we were talking with the insurance company in January, we were looking at an 8.66% increase. So what that means is, and I'm pointing to my screen so I can show you because I'm so used to talking with my hands. So that would mean in an individual on our HMO plan, the total cost of that plan per year is $12,554.52. The town share of that for the year, $7,783.80. And the employee share for the year, $4,772. That was the proposed rate increase. The PEC agreement brings that total cost down for an individual on the HMO plan to $11,320.08. You can see the breakdown further. It's really important when you look at the family plan that the proposed rate increase of the 8.66, the total cost of a family HMO plan is $32,659.44. And I'm illustrating the HMO plans for you versus the other plans because this is our most popular right now and has the largest number of subscribers on it. With that PEC agreement, we've actually been able to reduce that increase to a negative 2.02 for everyone. And that brings the total cost of that family HMO plan down to $29,448. So that's a significant savings for the town overall in this cost sharing agreement. So just some other highlights in this PEC agreement. You'll see the overall reduction in our plan cost was $700,978. That is the total cost. The employees will save $278,292 this year based on these plan design changes. And the town saving is $422,686. One of the things we worked on the PEC agreement in order to get this plan design change is that we agreed to have additional cost savings with the employees. So for example, this year in December of 2024, they will have a one-time premium holiday, and we will reduce their health insurance cost in the month of December for $250 for an individual and $500 for a family. We've also agreed to set up flexible spending accounts for all eligible employees. Prior to this agreement, only school employees were eligible for flexible spending accounts. Town employees were not eligible for that. We are also doing a contribution increase to the HSA for all employees on the high deductible HMO plan. We've also been able to reduce the cost on that high deductible HMO plan, making it a more attractive plan than our typical regular HMO plan. We are also actually offering now a new voluntary vision and dental plan. And we are making that dental plan will transition to Blue Cross Blue Shield, and it is a better benefit and lower voluntary rate for employees. And the voluntary vision plan is new. And then I'm going to turn this over to Frank in just a few seconds, and he can show you what this $422,000 savings results in. But is there any questions, particularly on municipal health insurance or what the town offers to our employees?
I had one question.
Sure.
When you showed the negative 2.06%, was that negative 2.06% compared to the 8%? So was it 6% or was it down year over year 2%?
It's going to be down minus 2.2%. Yep.
So that's effectively like a 10% swing.
Correct.
Because it was going up 8, now it's going down 2. Okay.
Yes. Yep. Yeah. So it saves for an individual on the HMO plan, saves approximately $30 a month versus what they're paying now. So they'll have the cost reduction. They will have the high deductible, the low deductible plan design changes and the tiered hospital costs, but the cost savings in the premium holiday should offset that for the first year.
Yeah, I mean, I think, well, I'll hold my comments until Frank gets through his section.
Quick question.
Sure.
Is this something that the PEC has voted to adopt? It's a done deal?
Yes, we voted in January. All of the unions have voted. The MOU that you received in your packet is unsigned. I have two representatives of the unions that need to come in and sign it. They were thrown off by the blizzard today, so they should be in by the end of the week to sign it, and then we'll post that. We'll have a PEC website and post all of that information up there.
It was a pretty fearsome blizzard, so that's understandable.
Any more questions?
Okay, then Frank's going to walk you through how we anticipate that savings is going to show up in our fiscal year 25 budget.
Okay, so. Which is here? All right. So now that we have our rates as of Friday, we go ahead and use those to determine what we're going to budget for next fiscal year. So this table right here on the left is a summary of our headcount, the number of employees who are enrolled in the town offered health plans. So our total right now, including the retirees, most of which are in this medics, these two medics categories right here. Our total headcount is 613 enrollees. So those could be in either individual plans or family plans. So that's not necessarily, the amount of people that are covered. That's just the amount of either employees or retirees that have elected for coverage. I should note that this number fluctuates pretty regularly. At this point last year, we are at 603 enrollees. A couple of months ago, we were at 623 enrollees, I want to say, maybe 628. We've talked a lot with Georgia, our treasurer collector, and Kathy Vandenboom, our HR director. The December, January timeframe really seems to be the sweet spot. And when you're looking out for future years in terms of stability. So this is our head count as of January.
Frank?
Yep.
Can I interrupt you just for a second? We have two people that have raised their hands.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So
Sorry
why
about
don't
that.
why don't we go with Brent first? And you ask your question.
Thanks. I just want to make sure I understand this. Just that upper left part of the spreadsheet. So over half the people for whom we are providing healthcare insurance are actually retired. Am I understanding that right?
Yes.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay, Emily, you're next.
Related question. Christine alluded to earlier how if someone retired but was under requirements for Medicare, they would automatically get put on the MedX plan. But when they are eligible for Medicare, how much of their insurance are we paying?
We pay 50% of the MedX 2 plan, which is the Medicare wrap plan.
And then, but what does Medicare pay?
They because they get their health insurance directly through Medicare, we wouldn't know that. We only cover them on the Medicare wrap plan.
But I guess what I'm asking is like, is the town paying for them because they were town employees until death? Or because like when I am done working, right, like Medicare is going to pay for me through the federal government. I'm just asking like the difference.
So we don't pay into Social Security. So as a municipal employee, we don't pay into Social Security. So when I say, give the example that I have 10 people who are not eligible for Medicare, it's because they have always worked as a municipal employee and won't be eligible for Medicare under Social Security.
Oh.
Yeah.
So in that case, they never end up going on Medicare?
That is correct. So right now we have about 10 subscribers who at this point will not go under the MedX 2 plan. They will stay on the HMO plan because they're not eligible for that. It happens very rarely. It happens when you have 2 municipal employees who get married, who have always worked for the municipal government. What you'll find a lot of times is that our employees who retire are eligible for Medicare through a spouse. And then we provide the Medicare wrap plan for them, which is the MedX2.
Okay,
And then they pay 50%, the
Of
other
the MedX2,
50%.
correct.
So that's less advantageous to them, obviously, like,
Right.
okay.
So in the past, I apologize, I don't know what year we made the change. You had your choice of the HMO as a retiree or the MedX plan. Once you were after 65, we have now mandated that we automatically enrolled. If you are eligible for Medicare, you automatically have to be enrolled in the MedX plan. You can't stay on the HMO plan.
yeah.
I'd have to go back. I'd have to check with Georgia. It might have been around 2018 that we made that change.
And this is what they call a wrap or supplemental to the Medicare. So it's
Right.
basically covers stuff Medicare doesn't cover.
Correct.
And that's why the rate on this is so small. It's most of the health insurance costs are covered by the government.
Correct. This is your prescription plan and anything that Medicare won't cover.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Any more questions on that, Emily?
No, thank you.
Okay. Okay, go ahead, Frank.
Okay, excuse me. So then we have, the total head count, and we'll talk about the fluctuation again in a second. We have the rates that Maya recently gave us for next year, 12 months in a year. The share that the town covers that tends to vary for each of the plans, and then you multiply all that out to get the annual cost. And that's how you get to this 4.5 million figure right here. We have a 5% buffer here to budget for those anticipated fluctuations in our headcount. Traditionally, we've carried a 10% buffer, and looking in the past couple of years, we're comfortable at this point lowering that to 5%. And again, the intention for or the purpose of carrying that is to budget for those people that might hop on, might hop off, might switch from a from an individual plan to a family plan. We don't know what people are going to do come open enrollment or other life changes. So that's the purpose of carrying that buffer. So that's
also we've had a history of teachers aging out of their family plan at 26 and joining the town's plan.
So after we get to that 4.8 figure, we start budgeting for the things that Christine mentioned that were negotiated through the PEC agreement. So the town is offering a partial premium discount in December 2024. That'll be $250 per individual and $500 on the family plans. We're also establishing the FSA fees for all employees, town and school. We estimate that to be about $4 per month per employee, per user. So we estimate that to be roughly about $14,000. In fiscal 24, we budgeted for $9,000 for HSA matches. We anticipate those increasing by a total of $8,000, given that we'll be matching an additional $400 for individual plans and $800 on family plans. And then we have an additional tax that we have to pay to the state for some of our employees. And that's what gets us to the total of $4.9 million and change that we were able to determine and budget for again on Friday after we got our rates from Maya. So initially in the financial forecast, we had anticipated a 5% increase in our health insurance budget. So that was almost $5.2 million. So the difference there is $226,266 less than we originally budgeted for. Again, as a result of the negotiation that the PEC was able to agree with the town. So I don't know if there's any specific questions about all of that information. Happy to answer any others that folks have.
Any,
I have a question. Sorry.
no, go ahead, go ahead.
Sorry, this question may be more for Christine than it is for you, Frank, but either of you can take it. I think when you were describing, and I may have misunderstood this, the PEC, you talked about getting all unions involved. But Brent then asked the question, is that chart correct that 300 people, approximately half the people we're covering are retirees covered by one of the two MedX plans? Are they non-participants in the PEC program?
No, thank you, Peter. You actually pointed out something I forgot to mention. In the PEC, you have a representative from each union, and then you have also a representative for the retirees, and they automatically carry 10% of the vote in that weighted vote structure. And Martha Moon was our retiree representative appointed by the state. Martha was a former teacher in town. So they do have, the retirees do have a seat at the table. This agreement did not look at the MedX rates. Everything was kept the same. The MedX rate for the retirees is set in January. We've had really great experience on that. I believe we had 3 years at 0%. This past year is the first time we've seen an increase, and that was a 6% increase. But this only dealt with the current active employees in terms of rate increase for the PEC.
Okay, thank you.
Looks like Jill has a question. Go ahead, Jill.
Yeah, thanks. So just a question. So the insurance budget starts with that 5% buffer included.
Yes.
Come
Yes.
2026, well, do you expect a turn back? Because you won't need the buffer?
So
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
no, go ahead, Christine.
I would say it's impossible to predict that. I don't know who will come on the plan, whether it's a life event, whether or not it open enrollment, this new plan design may be more attractive to people. I anticipate now that we have increased the HSA contribution for those on the HMO high deductible plan, and you'll see that that's up in the corner on the left. That's the Access Blue New England Saver high deductible plan. You'll see right now we have very few people that take advantage of that. Part of that issue is the cost of that high deductible plan didn't make it attractive enough for me to not just say, well, I'll take the HMO and pay a little bit more money, but not have to worry about it. We've changed that to make the high deductible more attractive. So I'm anticipating a migration from people on the regular HMO plan, which is the HMO Blue New England. You see that's our highest active employee group. I'm anticipating a migration to the high deductible, which may also eat into that 5% buffer as well. So I can't really give you an answer on if there will be a turn back. I may potentially have to come to you and say, we've had great turnout. Everybody wants to join the high deductible, and we may need some reserve fund money for that.
So, and you know, the other way I look at this, Jill, is like that's buffer is about $225,000.
Yeah.
And you know, if you just all you need is, you know, you saw the cost of some of these plans, right? They, you know, they get pretty pricey. So, you know, that if let's say it's a $20,000 for a family plan, I think it's more than that, but say it's 20, then that's like 10, you know, that's 10 people. All you need is 10 people to either age out, turn 26 and say, I want to,
Right.
you know, opt into the town's plan. And, you know, there's all sorts of things that could happen.
Sure. Yeah, I understand. I just was wondering the general nature of it year over year, how that ended up.
So this is a smaller buffer than we've had in the past.
Okay.
And part of that is because the timing of the rates, sometimes we don't get the rates until after we've already considered this budget. So we've carried a higher buffer in there in the past.
But whatever buffer doesn't get used does close to free cash.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. No, I was just curious, like
Yeah.
year over year, what happens. But I mean, it all goes up, right? No question. But with the
Yeah.
saving, that was on the other page about 400,000. It seems like it kind of shifts a little bit elsewhere. But the add back to this year's budget is great. So it's a really good job.
Yeah, and our premium holiday savings with the employees is a 1 year of the 3-year deal. So that premium holiday is only for the first year of the agreement.
Okay, great.
Any other questions on health insurance?
Recording in progress.
Is that Ed talking?
I think that might be-
I'm trying to get in on the computer as opposed to my iPhone.
Okay. You might want to mute one of them.
All right. All right.
Okay, I think we solved the problem. So at any rate, I just wanted to say, Christine, personally, I think what you've done with this budget is amazing. Faced with the increases that we've had, I know you've been working on this for a long time. You got involved in the association that looks at this, across the state, and the town is in a better position because of your efforts and making this an important point of negotiation this budget year. Everybody can see the answer. It's a great answer that we thought was easy to do last year, but wasn't as easy. And I think it's great that you've achieved the savings that you have. So thank you. Personally, I just want to thank you. So
I appreciate that, but I would be remiss if I did not thank the members of the PEC who were tremendous. If I can just take a quick second and name them for you, because we did a tremendous amount of work in a very short amount of time over the holiday season. And that was Nancy McLaughlin, who represented the teachers union, Diana Malesko, who represented the teachers aides, Bob Bond represented the custodians and the cafeteria union, Martha Moon, as I mentioned, represented the retirees, James Moses represented the police union, and Paul Schleiser represented the fire union. And on the town side, I owe a debt of gratitude both to Frank, Kathy Vandenboom, our HR person, and Michael LaFrancesca, who sat with me and went over these numbers over and over and over again with everybody. So I really appreciate it. It was a full team effort, both from the employee and the employer side, and just goes to show you what a great relationship we have with the IAC. When I originally talked to our labor council and wanted to pursue this option, and I began talking about this back in 2019 when I took over, and then the pandemic hit, and I did not want to change anybody's health insurance, obviously during a global health crisis. So we put this on hold for a few years. When I went to our labor council, they said I was crazy and that you should take the chapter 32B 21 to 23, mandate it. It'll be so easy. And I said, I can't take the easy way out. We have a great relationship with our employees, and I need one shot to make this work and sit down at the table and have a conversation with them. And they were so open to it, and so receptive to try and save not only themselves, but the town in the health insurance budget as well. So I really thank everybody for the team effort.
great. Well, that's excellent. Okay. Frank, do you want to kind of summarize the guidance now and take us through the changes?
Yeah. So let me just open up so I in the packet I sent out there were a few line items in the forecast or I guess in the budget spreadsheet that were highlighted, and those were the items that are changed. So I can run through those now. Starting at the top with state aid, we had budgeted for, I believe, a 1.86% increase. It actually came in at a little bit more than 2.06, which is a net increase to the operating budget of 16,000, almost 17,000. The other piece of state aid is actually the assessments that were given by this, or not given, that basically what they take out of our state aid, and those went down, which we can talk about in a minute. But the payments that we received only went up slightly, about $17,000. Our enterprise fund offset, this one could still change just a little bit, but a big piece of that is the health insurance rates. And actually, before I talk a little bit more about that, let me just take a step back and explain maybe what the enterprise fund offset is. So the two enterprise funds that the town operates, water and sewer departments, the term enterprise basically indicates that they are, for lack of a better term, their own businesses. They should be self-sustaining. They collect revenues for usage, and then those revenues basically fund the operations of those two enterprises. So no general fund monies should be used to basically subsidize those two departments, at least in Medfield. However, there are employees and other operational needs that those departments have that the town pays for. Things like healthcare benefits or certain facilities. For instance, staff of the sewer department work in the DPW building. And so basically what we do every year, mainly in the accounting department, is figure out all the costs that those two departments have that the town essentially pays for on behalf of them. And then we figure out a way for those two departments to reimburse the town for those costs. And so the last big piece that we were waiting for in determining that was for the employees that are on the town offered health insurance, what their rates were going to be next year. So again, the town is paying for those up front. Those two enterprise funds are reimbursing the town for those costs. We revised that on Friday after we received the healthcare rates, and that went up 61,000 from where we initially forecasted. These ones I did not highlight yellow because they changed so small, or the change was so small, excuse me, but our workers' compensation insurance and professional general liability and professional insurance line items were originally forecasted to increase 5% each. Those actually came in at 4.5%. So the add back to the operational budget, or the operating budget, excuse me, is about $2,800. Health insurance, we've talked about a little bit tonight already. We had a 5% increase there. The total increase that we're forecasting now is just 0.41%, and obviously on a $5 million budget, that is a huge savings back to the operating budget. Again, about $226,000. Scrolling down to the state aid offsets and state assessments. The big one here was we had anticipated our state assessments to be a little bit higher. They were actually $41,000 lower than we anticipated. The last item is our vocational school assessment from Tri-County. We had estimated a very small increase given that our headcount at Tri-County has been pretty stable. However, we did add one student, which means that the assessment came in about $17,000 higher than we anticipated. I should mention also that in future years, there will be a capital assessment added to that assessment. Right now, it's fairly small, given that the new school building project for Tri-County is in its early stages. But there will be some discussions in the future about how to pay for that capital assessment for Medfield's share of the new school building project. So if you were to scroll all the way down to the budget spreadsheet, you'd see those 6 squares highlighted in yellow. Given all the changes that I just ran through, the sort of add back that would be available for the operating budgets of the school and the town departments would be $247,951 for the schools and $82,650 for the town. And again, that's basically taking all of that increase that I just ran through, given the changes to the forecast, and then allocating the leftover revenue, 75% for the school, 25% for the town departments. So I believe in the fall when we met, we had a 4.1% increase for the schools and 4.2% for the town departments. That increases to 4.7% for the schools and 4.8% for the town departments, given the updates to the forecast. Those are pretty much the last major variables that were outstanding. So I don't think Christine or I see any other major changes to the forecast, unless something unforeseen should happen. But obviously this is a good result that we're going in one direction and not the other. Happy to take any questions on that.
But Jill, I know you have your hand up. I don't know if that's from the last time or.
It is, sorry about that.
Okay. I guess, I mean, I don't, if people remember, we did send out a memo with that guidance and we voted on it in the fall. And, you know, I think from my perspective, I don't see, I know we just heard from Frank and Christine that they don't see any changes coming, you know, in the future on this guidance. The only thing I could potentially see is some type of which would be really rare, if the state governor just somehow said we goofed up our budget and came out in the next few weeks and said, you know, they changed the local aid. But I don't anticipate that happening. So I don't know what people think about updating the guidance that we provided in the fall with this new guidance. And then, you know, moving forward with this as our proposed budget for the town meeting. Are there any questions or thoughts on that?
Yeah, Steve, I think it's appropriate to update the guidance, given that this is a change in the number, and give that direction to the town and to the school based upon these changes. And I would say, given where we are, that this would be hope to be our final position from the Warrant Committee, that these numbers are the guidance that we look each group to come forward on and to meet this number.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with that. I don't know if anybody has any other thoughts. Okay.
Did you
Oh, there's a question.
give me that Ed go first? Go ahead.
Oh, it looks like Ed's got a question. Go ahead, Ed. You got to unmute your phone, Ed.
There we go. You there?
Yep. Yep.
Frank, if you could tell me the 43, 112, 411. That's a little bit different number than I have as of the moment. Can you tell me where that came from?
Sorry, Ed. Sure. So that is basically, okay, now I see it. So for the school department, actually it's the same for the town departments as well. We take all of the fixed costs that we laid out in the fall, and then subtract out subtract from that, or I guess we take all of our revenues, we take all of the fixed costs, and then we subtract the fixed costs from the revenues. Everything that's left gets split 75-25 between the school and the town.
Okay. I'm sorry. Yeah, I understand that mathematics and how you arrive at that. And okay, which is different, that number. So it is different than their current proposal. That's
right. So
yeah,
right.
Yeah. Which is different.
So
okay.
yeah,
Right.
so just
Right.
by way of background, the guidance in the fall was 4.1 for the schools.
Right. Yeah.
They came in at well, we haven't met with them, but their latest presentation to the school department, the school committee, was 4.8 percent increase.
Right.
So this would this is less than that. It's 4.7.
Right.
And so we would, at least my thoughts are we would expect them to or in a budget of 43 million, find the difference.
Right. Okay. So now that makes sense, because the 247 you're giving to the schools is already inherent in the 43,112.
Yes.
Sorry, Ed, I should have been more clear on that.
That's right. That's already in there. So now that reconciles to what I have.
Yeah.
And
So
I can see the difference. I can see the difference that they need to work on. Okay.
Yeah, I think it's like what, $70,000 or $80,000 or something.
Yeah, right. Right. Yeah, because I've got 183. So it's like yes. 71,000. Right. Yep.
Yeah.
So Ed, to that point, I guess a clearer way to put it should have been, we took what was initially the guidance, we added in the quote unquote new revenues that are now available given the change in the forecast, and that I guess becomes sort of the new guidance.
Yeah, no, I get it. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
I have a question.
Yes.
Maybe it's just, it's my first time through this process, but I heard referring to the guidance. I fully understood the guidance we gave at the 2 months ago at the beginning of this process, but I'm a little confused on how we were talking about updated guidance. What is that?
So, and Steve or Bob, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I think what I used that term, given that we've updated the forecast, given that there's been some changes to some of the major expense line items that we initially predicted back in the fall. I think updated guidance, I was referring to new monies that would be available given that certain costs came in less than expected, so that we no longer have to budget for a 5% increase for health insurance, for instance. That money that we would have budgeted for that is now available for town and school operating budget increases.
Steve, you may want to give a little clarity, because this is, just to be clear, the guidance is coming from the Warrant Committee. It's not Frank's or the town's guidance. It's our guidance to them. And so the incremental revenue allows us to provide a higher target to the town and to the schools given this amount, and we're doing that in the ratio of the 75-25 where the guidance comes in. But I want to be clear that this is a Warrant Committee guidance to the town, not from the town. But Steve, you can probably articulate that better.
Let me just add to that, I guess. So, when we issued the letter in October, which was our first communication of the Warrant Committee's guidance, budget guidance for the 25 budget, it was understood that, there were sort of two big areas that could change this either up or down. We could be talking about a decrease in the guidance, but instead we're talking about an increase. The state could have come back with less aid than we thought, and the health insurance thing could have blown up. But we have a good story here, and so we are now in a position where we I would propose that we amend the guidance provided as a Warrant Committee in October to this new guidance of 4.7 and 4.8% increase. Does that help answer your question?
Because of the top line increase.
It's because of, well, I don't know what you mean by top line, the increase in this local aid and the fact that the health insurance
lower
fixed costs, because when the way we come up with the guidance is we take revenue minus cost, fixed cost.
Right, yeah.
So the fixed cost for health insurance went down, which increases the amount available. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So we had a favorable
Right.
result, and that's allowing us to update our guidance, is what you're saying.
Yes. Yes.
And Steve, just to, I'm sorry. Yeah, to clarify as well that, this is the first year that we've applied this approach, which essentially has been, here's what we have as our best estimate on what revenues will be available to the town. And then we take the fixed costs, as Steve said, and we say, okay, this is what's available for the, quote, discretionary budgets between the departments. And the reason I wanted to, because we haven't done that in the past. In the past, we've waited for them to come in with a number, then we'd backtrack, and this has been a very much more productive process. The piece that I'd like to emphasize here is, given where we are in this process, and where all the departments have been along, and every department that we've heard from has met constraints within their budget. Nobody gets everything they want, but they work within those guidelines that were given. Given the progress that's been made and the clarification on these two items, Steve, I would suggest that we look at this as more directive than guidance. Now, departments can come in with their number, as they are. But I think from a warrant committee perspective, this should be our directive to say this is amount that's available to the town and to the schools for them to spend in the 2025 budget.
Yeah, I guess I would put it, I don't disagree with what you're saying. I would just put it a little differently and say that it's the preference of the Warrant Committee that we not have an override, and that this guidance allows us to not have an override. And that if, I guess theoretically, if one of the broader groups thinks differently, they could, sort of bring forth an override proposal and push that at town meeting. But I mean, I think it's the preference of this committee has always been to avoid an override. And I think we're certainly very close. I think, keep in mind that first guidance we gave to the town of 4.2, their first pass at the budget, they met that guidance, and they have unmet needs still. This change in the guidance allows them to maybe meet some of those unmet needs, not all of them. And it also allows the town school department, the school department to deal with you'll hear about it at the next meeting, but they have a cost issue with special education this year. And this allows most of that issue to be resolved. So, I would, if, unless there's a disagreement on sort of the what we're talking about here, my proposal would be that we sort of vote on this new guidance, and then I will send a one paragraph email, documenting that we had this, this updated guidance, and this is, basically letting people know this is the expectation of what we would move forward with a balanced budget for a town meeting within the Prop 2.5 override limits.
And Steve, just to clarify, the guidance is something that we would produce annually when we start budget season, right? When we get into the process. So it's not a standing 4.8%, right? It's just what we're working with for fiscal year 2025.
Right. It's just, this is a yearly guidance, right? We're not telling them every year this is the increase. No, I'm not that good.
Well, and I think, and I think it's important to say, Steve, you're better at this, you're more diplomatic. The point I'm making is this is how much we have. And to your point, this is what the town can spend on each one of this. And the distribution of this goes to the select board, it goes to the school board, it goes to the town, right? I mean, it's clarity that, in the past, we've gone through this of whose budget it is. Well, this is the proposed budget that comes from the Warrant Committee. In whether you call it guidance or directive, I think at this point, this is what's available. And as you said, if you need more money to go someplace else, it's only going to come from an article to do an override of this amount that's available.
Any questions on that? Additional thoughts or, okay.
I don't have a question, but I just wanted to say that I think I'm really grateful that I joined this year, because the way it all proceeded, it sounded like in previous years it was a little, not like confusing or all over the place, but certainly like coming in the back door of, money and then trying to scramble towards the end. And watching the school committee meeting, seeing Dr. Marsden saying that this made the process a little easier for them was just a nice introduction to this for me personally. And so I just really thank you for that. Because everybody here, especially Steve and Frank and Christine, did a lot to help us new members with that. And I also understand that it's not always going to be like that. I hear these departments having needs, and some year we may need an override, but it's certainly nice this year. It was so far seeming relatively smooth. So just wanted to share that.
Yeah, well, no, thanks. I think Christine and Frank would agree with your comments about the process this year. I know seems everybody likes the new process, so.
We have been talking about this process since 2019, so it was nice to finally implement it. And I just thank the Warrant Committee for being a part of the process and engaging in that process of wanting to do that process of doing a consensus revenue and kind of flipping the budget, timeline. I'm not going to say guidance, budget timeline a little bit. So thank you guys for being so receptive to implementing it.
Well, Emily, your characterization of the past processes wasn't too far off. So
chaos. Let's just call it chaos. Organized chaos.
I do agree with Bob that it might benefit from clarity to maybe not use the same word again. I don't know, the directive is a bit strong, but just in terms of optics or being clear on how this is different from that, rather than we sort of changed it. We might benefit from some verbiage that's a little clearer, but I think that it sounds great to me.
I think if I can just give you some assistance on that, I would frame your fall guidance based on the revenue consensus that we had at the time and the knowledge we had back in the fall. And there has been additional revenue based on the two things we discussed tonight, the increase in the local aid and the health insurance. So based on the increase in that revenue, that's the change. And it's not a change just because you're changing the directive. It's a change based on actual revenue that can be counted upon within that budget.
So maybe it's guidance based on updated revenues and costs or something.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, those are good comments, and I will when I draft up the communication, I'll certainly make those comments. Well, unless there's any other comments or questions, I would entertain a motion to approve the new updated FY25 budget numbers.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, let's do a roll call. So let's see, Jill?
Yes.
Okay, Bob?
Yes.
Brent?
Yes.
Emily,
Yes.
Peter Michelson,
Yes.
Pete Saladino,
Yes.
Deb,
Yes.
and Ed Vizella.
Yes.
Okay, did I get everybody? I think, and Steve Callahan, I'm a yes. Okay, motion passes. All right. All right, so I think we can go on to our next agenda items, and I think I know Jill Jill had a preference that I think she has quite a few of these town department budgets, so if she can do all of hers at once.
I do. I want to fly through them if that's okay. And then-
Okay, yeah, and so I'll let you take over the departments you want to cover.
Okay, so I believe I've got health, veterans, Memorial Day Fund, the Cultural Council to review, and I'm just trying to pull open the meeting packet again because I just had it all queued up. Sorry about that. There we go. Are you guys want me to share, or do you want? I'll just walk through them if you guys have it open.
Frank, do you have? Can you share that? The budget, the department budgets. Okay, there you go. There's health department.
Okay, great. So health department is level funded, no increase here from last year's approved budget. Does anyone have any questions about any of these line items? Pretty straightforward. Okay. The next item was veterans services. So we actually saw a slight decrease in the operating expenses for veteran services. And Frank, jump in whenever, but this is largely due to veterans benefits and benefits appropriation being reduced as there are less number of veterans in town utilizing the services. That's largely the change here. Any questions on veterans? We also then have Memorial Day. No change from last year. That's to supply out in town the decor for the Memorial Day.
For the parade.
Yes. Thank you. And then we also have the Arts and Cultural Council. No change from last year. That's actually a reimbursed grant from the state. So we, put up the budget for it, gets reimbursed through the programs that are submitted from Medfield. And it helps support arts and music programs in town. There's a whole website out there on all of that, but it supports things like some of the jazz festivals, Shakespeare in the Park, things like that you see going on around town, certainly in the warmer months.
Okay.
And I believe that was the rest of mine, unless I missed one, but
Okay,
no real changes on those. So
they seem pretty straightforward.
yes, they are.
Okay. So that leaves us with the Sealer of Weights and Measures and Historical Commission. I don't know, Frank or Christine, if you want to quickly cover those.
Yep, so I can take care of those. So Sealer of Weights and Measures, you will see if you're looking at budgets with the largest overall percentage increase, Sealer of Weights and Measures wins with 144% increase. which is actually only a $4,600 increase. And that is due to the retirement of our former sealer of weights and measures. And we have now have a new person in place, and we have an intermunicipal agreement with Millis and Medway. And we have one shared employee for the 3 towns that handles all of the sealer of weights and measures.
So we shouldn't see that type of increase every year, just because of the new agreement.
Just because of the new agreement, the cost of the salary sharing, and Medway is the primary office for the sealer of weights and measures, and Millis, Medway, and Medfield share in all of, it's a full-time position, so we share in the health insurance, all of the costs through Medway. So
Okay,
just our portion, salary and benefits offset.
okay, good. So I think those are the departments that we had on the agenda for tonight. Christine, I don't know if you're prepared to talk about it now, or maybe at our next meeting might be better, but as a result of the new budget that we just changed for fiscal 25, we just voted on, there'll be an increase to the town piece of it. And are you prepared to talk about how that might change your budgets?
Not this evening.
Okay.
I have a back of the envelope calculation of items that I had to cut from department head requests. Now that I have, once I receive the official guidance, I'll be meeting back with those departments. I do have a list of cuts that I will restore to my budget. I want to make everybody, I know there was some, it seemed easy for us to do this because we showed it to you, but you didn't get to see all of the meetings we had with department heads and the disappointment when we couldn't fund certain things. So we appreciate the increase in the revenue, and we'll go back and be prepared to present what we're restoring to our budget.
Okay, good. There is a question online from Chris McHugh Potts. I think this might be Jill. That says, just to double check, the arts cultural amount represents the town match to Mass Cultural Council amount. So in essence, the cultural group get more than what is shown due to state reimbursement, ? So I don't know if
To my understanding, that line item is fully reimbursed through grants. So there's no other funds going through
Okay.
town budget for that program.
Okay. All right. Okay. Our next agenda item is the school building committee update. So
Yeah,
Peter-
I'll be very brief. We voted just last night to award a contract to, gosh, I'm forgetting the name, to a company called Future Think, sorry, not a name that comes trippingly. We only got 2 responses because we asked for a quick turnaround time. This company had done a lot of work for school departments and school systems, both in Massachusetts and throughout the country. And they were actually the lower cost of the 2 bids that came in. So the combination of the lower cost and, to my mind, more importantly, their extensive experience doing this kind of demographic and enrollment study sort of carried the day, and that was a unanimous vote to approve them. And the other action last night was just a vote to authorize the superintendent and the school committee to send I understand it's just a couple page long statement of interest to the MSBA to at least get the process rolling, to be in a position to apply for this coming December's cycle. So that process, I think, now has to go to the full school committee and also to the full board of selectmen, select board, excuse me. But that's not the expectation, and hope is that won't be particularly controversial either place.
Okay,
Peter, I'm sorry if I missed it. Is the firm of the bid we accepted for feasibility study?
No, this is just a much smaller than that. This is for a demographic and enrollment study.
Oh,
Sorry
thank
if I wasn't clear in the way I spoke.
I could have missed it. No, thank you.
okay. Next agenda item is the recommended free cash usage appropriations for FY24. Frank, I don't know if you can put up on the screen. Yes, okay. So just by way of background, you remember sometime in the fall, I think it was October, we had a preliminary discussion about the amount of free cash and what were some, ranges and ideas of the use of that free cash. Since that time, there's been, some changes in sort of thinking, I guess, and some new requirements, not requirements, new needs that have arisen that we didn't know about back in the fall. And so this is the latest recommended usage. A lot of the line items you will recognize, some of the amounts might change from what we talked about. But and then there's some new items on here. And so I'm going to let either Christine or Frank take us through this.
Yep, I'll walk you through it.
Okay.
So the amount of certified free cash is $5,142,310. That has not changed since we presented that to you last time. And I'll just go through and describe each one of these to you. So the Dale Street Route 27 Mitigation Fund, this is money that was set aside when Medfield Meadows came in for their approval, and that's the development at the corner of 27 and Dale Street. They had given the town a mitigation payment of $98,567, and that is for improvements to the signalization of that intersection, as well as the replacement. If any of you walk down there, they're in desperate need of replacement. The crosswalk signs that look horrendous. We're hoping to replace those once this money's been reappropriated. So that money was received into the town. There was no mitigation fund set up at the time and no mechanism for that to be transferred anywhere. So it closed to free cash, and that now needs to be appropriated into this mitigation fund so that we can spend that money and replace those horrendous crosswalk signs to maybe updated ones past 1955. So we're working on that. The next one is a new item. This is the Medfield State Hospital Maintenance and Security. For anybody who watched the Trinity meeting the other night, they are taking by right their 2 6-month extensions and closing on that. So they will not be closing this year. We did not anticipate we would have to continue with maintenance and security. So I have put a $50,000 payment in here for that. I am working with Trinity actively to try and get them to cover more of the costs so that that burden does not fall back on the taxpayers in Medfield. We are recommending to not transfer to the General Stabilization Fund. We've had steady increases to the General Stabilization Fund. I'll let Steve discuss that further once I finish this list. We have our annual, this will be the 3rd year, transfer to the Capital Stabilization Fund of $700,000. We have Park and Recreation capital projects. This was, if you'll recall, we had the discussion with Parks and Recreation, and I believe last fall as well. Their recreation revolving fund at the end of the year cannot have more than $10,000 in it, and it had 78,000. So 68,000 had to be closed to the town's free cash. We earmarked that for them to go back into their capital projects, and that is slated to be part of the capital plan. We have a recommendation to transfer to the new school tax impact mitigation fund at $750,000. We have transferred to a special education reserve fund, which will also be a new fund. That's $205,000. We have recommended a school building committee feasibility study. This will be our 3rd year. and we're recommending 650,000. We have our transfer to the OPEB trust, which by financial policy is 551,250. The Conservation Commission has a capital project they're working on. They requested a warrant article. I have been meeting with the chair and anticipate meeting with the full board of Conservation Commission to incorporate this potentially into the capital budget. So this request actually may go away, but it stands as of today. The Select Board Economic Vitality Fund, this was a yearly appropriation given to the Select Board to support projects such as the Downtown Stroll, the Garden Club, and there's several other groups that have come to us to do projects in the downtown. That has been funded in the past by ARPA. We anticipated the next 2 years being funded by ARPA, but we've run into a little sticky situation with the county on that. So we're working through that. And then we do have a small amount, 8,000 for revolving funds. This year, we're proposing setting up the EV charger revolving fund, a council on aging revolving fund, and an increase to the vaccine revolving fund. So that's a total of 8,000. So that brings us to a total a little over 3 million. It would leave the free cash balance at 2,026,493. And we're required to have, in order to meet the financial policy, the free cash required on hand is 1,975,822. So that leaves, in this recommendation, that leaves $50,672,000 available in free cash to be spent or returned to the free cash balance.
Beautiful.
Okay.
That was a lot of words. So if anyone
Yeah.
has any questions, I'm happy to discuss it.
I have a question.
Sure.
I fully support it, but the transfer to the school tax impact mitigation fund, that has to be voted on at town meeting, right?
So all of these do. These will either be warrant articles or transfers within the budget. So yes, that would need to be.
Yeah,
These
The
are
so
just
mitigation fund doesn't exist, the tax impact mitigation fund doesn't exist yet, does it?
yeah, that's
No.
correct, Peter.
That's correct.
That's correct, Peter.
Yeah.
But I think Christine's point is that every single line item here will be a part of an article at
Okay.
town meeting.
Yeah.
Because it's appropriating free cash. So it has to have its own separate article. But
But won't we have to have a
there'll be two articles for the tax mitigation.
Yeah, okay,
There'll be one to create it and then one to transfer this free cash.
okay.
Yeah.
I
Thank you.
anticipate doing that within one article.
Okay, yeah.
But yes,
Now
And
that you
then
say that,
I-
I mind when
I-
you said that before.
I assume that'll be the case for special ed too, right?
that is correct.
Should, right.
Okay, so you'll do it all in one article. Okay.
Yeah, we run these by legal counsel, determine whether or not they need to be two articles or one. We like to keep them as one. I think it's less confusing for people when they are one article, but legal counsel will review that and determine whether or not they need to be two articles.
Yeah. So I mean, I think, I don't know what people think about this latest here, but we tried to, we tried to prioritize what we thought were the priorities of the town as well as needs. And there's certain line items that are just requirements, like the OPEB trust one is just something we do every year out of free cash. So I think, I will make a comment on the general stabilization. There's been a history of transferring funds into that stabilization fund. And the balance, I think, don't quote me on this, but I think it's around 3.2 million. And it's all invested. So it's currently earning 4 or 5% interest. And, when you look at the purpose of that fund, it's really to stabilize the operations of the operating budget in the event of an economic downturn or some type of negative economic event, a recession or something like that. And so, in my mind, I look at sort of we're fortunate we live in a town where everybody pays their property taxes even in a recession. So that's not really at risk, historically hasn't been. The only things that I think revenues that could potentially be at risk would be the local state aid and local receipts, which is about, $14 million. And, we've never had a year where that's, decreased more than like 10%. So, 10% of 14 is like 1.4 million. I think, the stabilization fund probably has 2 years worth of, stabilization that it could handle. And it's going to grow without transferring money because it's invested. So that was my thinking there, is that we're fortunate. I think it's built up to a critical mass, and it's invested. And relative to what's at risk and how it would be used, I think it's at a good balance. The other thing I'll mention is that this leaves, Frank, I don't know if you can speak to this, but I think the number was when you do you have the spreadsheet? Can you show it? The forecasted balances of our reserves.
Excuse me, I do. However, it is not updated. I don't think
Okay.
with these totals.
Okay.
But I can do that for our next meeting.
Okay. I think when we were looking at it, we've got a nice trend going with the reserves. They're as a percentage of our expenditures. They're, I think, moving from like 8% to 9%, and it's close to 10 or maybe slightly over 10. But Frank will go through that at our next meeting. So
what's the thinking on the 5672 at the bottom there?
that is just I guess the thinking is that if something comes up that we don't know about within the next few weeks, it's there to potentially deal with some of that issue that might come up. If not, it will just stay in free cash. We won't appropriate it.
Yeah,
So,
Steve, I think could you maybe just touch upon when we talk about how we're improving our financial position, the free cash, the 1,975,000 in terms of our policy?
yeah, so our policy, our current financial policy is that that we would maintain 2.25%, I believe it is, 2.25% of expenditures. It's a defined term of how you quantify that in free cash each year. That's what the 1.9 is. We also have reserves that are in, the general stabilization. We have reserves that are in the town reserve fund, and then also other types of the land held from disposition from the Hinckley property. There's like 450,000, I think, in that account. So when you look at all of the reserves, the goal in our financial policies is to be close to is it 11%, Christine?
Yes, we have a minimum of 7.5 and a goal of 9 to 11.
Yeah.
Yep. And then I can tell you the first year, let me just pull it up real quick. Hold on one second, I apologize. In fiscal year 22, when we ran the reserves as a percentage of our general fund expenditures, fiscal year 22, we were at 7.7. So we were just over our minimum. In fiscal year 23, we increased our reserves and we were at 8.7% of our general fund expenditures. In fiscal year 24, we were at 10.2. We anticipate being in that same area, if not slightly higher than that. So we've definitely made some ground in the last 3 years in building up our reserve accounts.
And some of these transfers we're making out of free cash will go into those reserves. So, for example, the tax impact mitigation fund, the special education reserve fund, that'll be part of our reserves. So that'll just help the pro forma numbers that you talked about.
Correct.
So that, I don't think we're gonna vote on this tonight, but this is probably when we get into articles and the financial articles, you'll see articles on all these line items and you'll see dollar amounts associated with it that will be, is basically what you see on this page.
Does it require another vote to pull it out of the reserve fund? How do funds move out of the reserve funds?
So it depends on the reserve fund. So there's some, a free cash, transfer from free cash is like a 50% vote, I think, at town meeting. A stabilization fund is typically a 2/3 vote. And then the special education reserve fund, the way that's going to be set up is that it will require a majority vote of the school committee and the select board.
And that is set out by state statute.
Yeah. Yeah, that's in the statute. So it's really, Peter, it depends on which one you're talking about, and they all have different, rules. But that's generally how it works.
Thank you.
Yeah. And I think the select board controls some of, I think they control that economic vitality fund. That's just all within their control.
That is within their control. That's
yeah. All right. Any more questions on free cash? All right. Next is the articles. So let Christine take us through that.
Sure. I don't think we've had a chance to go through all of these yet. I think they've been kind of sidelined the last couple of meetings. So I'm going to go through them all. So I apologize if this is a repeat for anybody who's watching the select board meetings. And please stop me at any time if you have any questions, interrupt me if you want to talk about a specific article. So we start out with our annual town reports, and that will be the calendar year 23 annual town report. We have the elected officials compensation article. We have our personnel administration plan. We have the classification and compensation plan. We have an article right now, article number 5, and I apologize. I will tell you in advance that these numbers are going to change. And Brittany is very upset at me for having assigned them numbers. So please don't get attached to them, especially if these are your articles.
You're very brave putting numbers down.
Nobody's happy with me. I went out on a limb and nobody's happy. We have Article 5. We have an article, I'm sorry, to dissolve the opioid stabilization fund. As you remember, last year, we were given guidance by the Department of Revenue on how to handle our opioid stabilization money. And they recommended all of the towns create this opioid stabilization fund. They have just recently in December reissued that guidance and said, nope, we actually don't think that's the best way for you to handle it. We'd like you to create an opioid special revenue fund. I actually have a call into the Department of Revenue. There is a chance that they will consider that special revenue fund does not need to be set up by town meeting, that it falls within the authority of the Department of Revenue. So that article number 6 may fall off, but it's still on there for a placeholder. As I mentioned earlier, we're creating new departmental revolving accounts for the EV chargers. Parks and Recreation has put in an article to change their revolving account to a new departmental revolving account. And we are creating a new revolving departmental account for Council on Aging. And then this is an annual article. We are obligated to set the fund expenditure limits for those revolving funds. We have our cemetery perpetual care article. We have our local PEG access appropriation article. As I mentioned, some of these will sound familiar since you just saw them on the free cash. We have to set up the Route 27 Dale Street Traffic Mitigation Special Revenue Fund, establish a Special Education Stabilization Fund, which is also in some areas called the Reserve Fund, but is a stabilization fund. We have established the Elementary School Tax Mitigation Stabilization Fund. I think what is currently Article 16, establish the Medfield State Hospital School Mitigation Stabilization Special Revenue Fund. This is just for those of you who might not be aware, Trinity Financial, once they close, will provide $1 million payment to the school department for mitigation for any new students that we receive from that development. Given the announcement that Trinity is not closing for at least a year or two based on what they presented the other night, we'll probably hold this article. There's no reason to set that up yet. We have some annual articles, which are transfer into the Municipal Building Stabilization Fund, the capital budget appropriation for municipal buildings, appropriation to the Capital Stabilization Fund, capital project appropriation for non-buildings. We have elementary school feasibility study, prior year bills. And for those of you who love to keep track, that requires a 4/5 vote at town meeting. We have our fiscal year 2025 operating budget. We have our fiscal year 2025 water and sewer enterprise fund budget. We are rescinding the bond authorization that exists on the books for the Mount Nebo water tower from 2018. An appropriation to the 375th anniversary trust fund, appropriation to the Economic Vitality Fund, appropriation for pond surveys, appropriation for Conservation Commission property signage, appropriation for maintenance and security at the Medfield State Hospital, appropriation for Danielson Pond. Then there are some general articles. The Board of Selectmen, much to the surprise of the person who is currently running for town moderator, have been discussing whether or not our charter calls for the town moderator to be elected each year. The select board have suggested that should be a 3-year term. We are looking at some housekeeping articles for zoning enforcement fees to clarify the language that we currently have. There is a proposed change to the dog bylaw. We must authorize the select board name change in the town bylaws. For those of you who remember, we went from the Board of Selectmen to the select board. That's been changed everywhere, but we need special authorization to change it in the town bylaws. We have an article for Hinckley North Disposition Authority. We have one zoning article this year. Actually, planning board and select board are currently meeting. I'm trying to watch both meetings at the same time. They're recommending the MBTA community zoning districts. We have one citizen's petition this year. That's the sale of the Medfield State Hospital chapel property to Belforge. They currently have a 99-year lease with us. And then the last article is free cash. We hold that in case there are any changes to the free cash recommendations by the town. And I'm happy to say we have not had to use the last article for the last 3 years, which has been great. That's where we are.
Anybody have questions on any of these articles?
You.
Okay. All right. I think we are coming to the end of our agenda, I remember. So, Christine, is there anything else you wanted to update us on from town finance or anything?
No, I think you've heard a lot from us tonight, where we are and how we're working to restore some of the cuts we've made in our budget. I know that Jeff and Michael will be doing the same on their budget, and I hope to be presenting a final balanced budget to both the select board and the Warrant Committee very shortly.
Okay, great. All right. Any informational items, anything anybody wants to bring up, talk about? All right, not hearing any. There is a question. Hold on a second. I don't know if it's a question or a comment. It says, my apologies, I forgot how the Cultural Council allocation works. In 2014, we approved a town meeting article that began to match Medfield Cultural Council funding received from Massachusetts lottery proceeds. The total Cultural Council allocation for town meeting for 25 would represent combined lottery proceeds and town match. So there would be no additional funds coming for the groups. Sorry for any confusion. Chris. Okay, I think that's just a comment. All right. So unless there's anything else, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, let's do a roll call. Ed?
Yes.
Okay, Bob?
Yes.
Jill?
Yes.
Brent?
Yes.
Peter Michelson?
Yes.
Emily,
Yes.
Deb,
Yes.
Peter Saladino,
Yes.
and Steve Callahan. I am a yes. We are adjourned. Motion passes. Have a good evening, everyone.
Thanks all.